Hey guys, welcome to another episode of El Jefe's Shop Shop. This week, rust holes. Again. Alright, so I did want to try and do all of the floor first. There's obviously a few bits I haven't got yet, but this one's really annoying me. This whole sill panel has a bit of rust in it from about here forwards, and then there's some problems at the back, which I'll do in a later episode. But I want to try and start this episode off by fixing this guy. So there's two layers here, the curved layer and then this flat layer as well. So I want to get rid of both of them and weld in some new patches, and then while I'm in there, I can get to the back of this patch that I did in the last episode and fix that from the back, put a bit of paint on it or whatever I need to do. So I'm going to start this episode doing something I haven't done before, and I'm going to use paint stripper and take all the paint off this sill. I also want to know where this rust starts and stops. I can see a hole here and there's a bit of bubbling and stuff along the whole way, so I want to make sure I get all of it. So got a bit of cardboard down if it happens to drip. Let's see how we go, I guess. Alright, so I'm both stoked and disappointed that I did that, but the area that I expected to be bad is pretty bad. And as you come along, the top is reasonably chunky. This corner that I thought was full of bog is not, so that's a good start. Coming to the side, it's pretty well mint, which is really nice. And underneath is all pretty mint as well. There's a few little dents just there. And then coming along to the back, which is where we could see rust anyway. So from that join there's a bit of rust. There's a big hole under there, which we already knew was there. That bit looks a bit crunchy. And then the back seems pretty good. So I'm not too sure how to attack this, but I will ask the people who know and see what they reckon. Do I just treat this and ignore it, or do I cut it out and replace it? But I'm not too sure. Alright, so I just sent some photos to XB Sedan Chap, and he has said to use one of these particular grinding discs, which I'll put on the screen. So that's like a Scotch-Brite disc for a grinder, and basically hit all the surface rust with that, and all of the holes will come up, and all of the light rust will just get ripped off. But now that I can see what I'm actually dealing with, I'm pretty confident that all of these holes are pretty solid. Obviously I need to fix that guy, and probably about here-ish forwards. And then that one spot on the back, which probably goes from about this join to about here. So it's a pretty big guy, but it's not anything over the top. So he's pretty confident that it'll be good once I do that. Strip it all properly and then hit it with rust converter, primer and paint. Should be pretty good. And all this stuff's covered anyway. Most of it's under the carpet and the trim panel. So it shouldn't be too much of a worry. So thank you, Graham, for your help. I will be doing that in a future episode, I imagine, because this is a bit scary. I don't have one of those discs, but I will be getting into it soon and fixing these holes. So speaking of another episode, this rear rust repair is going to be a nightmare. So I think what I'm going to do is bring it up to this join here where there's a small hole, so another 10 mil, and bring it out to about here, so another probably 50 mil, and just call it there. This inner panel needs to be repaired separately to the outer skin, so it is going to be a bit of a mission, and it's all visible obviously, so it's got to be pretty good repair compared to some of the ones on the inside, which is where I was learning obviously. And then this weld also tucks all the way around, so it's a pretty big repair, but that'll be in a later episode. Alright, so I've cut the top of the sill off here. As you can see, I've cut this whole section out and taken the side off as well, so where the pinch weld used to be. Then there's also a 2-layer situation going on. So this one here runs all the way to this guy, and then this one here comes to about here and just overlaps. So while I'm in here, I'll also dress up the back of that. As you can see, there's a few bits of wire and it needs some priming. So I've got to make some templates while I'm in here. So I need to make a flat one that goes from here to here, and then a rounded one that goes to there, and also both have to have this pinch weld return on. So I'll make those and show you what we've got. Alright, so get a few templates. Let's make them into steel. There we go. Alright, so I have here the templates you just saw me cut out. I have put a bend in this one, and I've put a bend in this one. This one was a bit tricky because it's got a curve in it, but a couple of relief cuts in the back and it bent reasonably well. So the plan with these now is to put these into the sill panel and weld them in. Before I do that, I'm going to rust convert and paint inside of the sill as best I can, and then I'll weld these in. But I'll just show you how these fit so that you know what's going on when it's all painted and starts getting welded in. Alright, so this is the sill panel. So this is the first piece that goes in. So it needs to tuck in behind this little recess here and go up against the pinch weld like that. So this needs to be flat here and also flat up the front here, which you can kind of see. So that's going to be pretty tricky because it is a few different angles, but that needs to go in there like that. And then this guy here goes onto the top of it, and the idea is it smooths out the transition from the sill panel to the A-pillar, so I need to weld that going as well. So fully weld this and then fully weld that completely separately, and make sure they're all ground back and smooth and all that sort of stuff. So before I do that, let's paint inside of here. Alright, now we've got that rust converter in there, got the pour 15 in there. It's not perfectly covered, but it is at least somewhat covered. And I can chuck the body chutes gun back in here and a few spots along the chassis rail once it's all sealed up. So there is a few spots that I've missed, obviously. Pretty hard with that body chutes gun. You either get it all over yourself or all over the car. So this is just the first pass with the paint really as well, because I still have to fix this spot up the back. When I do that, I'll probably cut more out and I can probably get more access. So I imagine I'll be doing it again. I also have to do the other chassis rail. So when I cut that one open, if I found more spots in here that I can get to, I will do that as well. And then when I do the interior, I still need to do pour 15 in there. And I can jam some in through here and a few other spots along the sill. So with that said, there's nothing left to do other than weld the panel in. So I'm just going to start doing that. Alright, so that rust repair was a bit of a mission, but it's done. I'm sick of rust. That's all I got for you. I'm very sick of rust, but this actually came out pretty well. There is a bit of a squared edge here. I tried to round it as much as I can, and there's a little bit of weld in here, which is hard to get to, and here, and here, and here, and up there. So then I also need to trim this back to the right shape, which is pretty cruisy, and there's a couple of welds I need to do on the back. But for the most part, it's done and it's pretty smooth. I'm pretty happy with it. Looks like a thing, or doesn't look like a thing is probably more to the point. So that's pretty much it. Happy with that. I've got to do this one at the back, which I'm not looking forward to, but we will get to that in a later episode. So now that this sill panel is repaired, it's time to move on to the next rust repair, which is the drain hole in the passenger floor. So I got a cut from the wreckers the other day, and let's jump straight into that. Went to the wreckers on the weekend and got a panel cut for the floor. So this one's not particularly great, but It's got no holes in it, so it's better than what I've got. So I've just stripped it back and covered it in rust converter. So hopefully it will last a bit longer than if I hadn't done that. The alternative to this is to just put a flat plate in. So I'd like to try and keep the original shape as long as I can. So let's jump into the car and make it fit. Alright, so as you just saw, I cut the floor out, clecoed the new panel in, and you can see where the holes are. I know I've got plenty of meat around all of them. The top one I did not, but it means I can cut this rust off that's here, the rust off that's here, and the rust down here. There'll be a little bit here, which is not great, and obviously this stuff in the middle I can't do anything about, but I can get rid of a whole bunch of this stuff. I left this little corner for that extra hole that was in the bottom corner, but I think I'm just going to weld that little hole up and cut this as slim as possible, and then weld it from the top, grind it smooth so all the rust, all the water can fall off the floor onto this panel / the weld and then into the hole. Probably don't want any water in the car, so this probably doesn't really matter, but try and make it as nice and factory as I can. And then once I put this back in, I want to open up the floor a little bit more, because this is right on the curve. I cut it as small as possible in the car. So once the curve has been cut a little bit more, this will be a bit wider, and this will be obviously a lot narrower, and there won't be a whole lot of overlap. So I'm going to cut this down as much as I can and stick it back in the car. Alright, so while I was grinding this back, I found another little rust hole just here, so I'll cut this little section out here. And I need to weld in the new patch before I can put in the floor, which I've also trimmed. So that's going to go on the bottom, but for the purpose of just showing you how it fits, that's how it's going to look, but from the bottom. So there's a bit of overlap, but not heaps. But I do need to just fill in this little corner here before I get too much further in. So I have ground back the bottom, I haven't primed it yet. I need to do this little corner and then I'll get into it. Alright, so as you just saw, I have taken the sound deadener off. I have welded this in, used the clecos again, ground it all back. There is a few spots that look a bit rubbish, this one in particular, but I will go over all of this stuff when I'm doing the interior for the last time. So it looks pretty reasonable. There is rust here that I'm not super happy about, but I think it'll be fine, and once it's got a million layers of paint on it, it'll probably last for another 50 years. So it should be good to go. I did keep the little drain just here, so it should be as per factory really. The underside's not particularly pretty, but I haven't touched it at all, so I will be grinding that back a bit and seam sealing it and all that sort of stuff once everything's done. And with that repair done, the passenger side is reasonably complete. There is still some welds to do and some stuff to tidy up, but I'm pretty happy with it so far. When I get everything done and all the back floor and everything's all back together, I will go over the whole floor, make sure everything's 100%, and then button it all up before I paint it all. But for now, let's jump into the driver's side. I'm just going to paint strip the seal panel and just get it all bare and ready to go, and then we can jump into that in another episode. I got the whole second side paint stripped. Got pretty much the same problem here. That is only the one layer though, which is quite strange, so unless the bottom layer is completely gone, we'll have a look at that at some point. We've got another hole here and a bit of rust across the top here. I haven't touched any of these deep pitting yet, but there's a hole there, there's a hole there, probably a couple of the other ones will probably blow through, I imagine. Then underneath, pretty reasonable until you get to the back. So this corner's all pretty good, which I'm happy about. Then we've got a problem there, a couple of problems there, and then a problem under there as well. So pretty much this whole piece, well, there forwards and there backwards, so leaving a tiny bit in the middle, has to go, and a bit of a problem here, which I might be able to just convert. But the rest of it looks pretty good. I mean, it's, you know, it's a 52-year-old car, so there's going to be problems. So I'm just going to wrap this in primer for now, and we'll get back to it when we get back to it. Alright, so thank you very much for watching this episode of El Jefe's Shop Shop. The rust repairs are only just beginning. There's a lot more to do, but I am getting a bit more comfortable with it, so it's good to get some stuff done. But that'll be it for this week, so thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next week.